started as a guitar player, so there's always going to be a little piece of me that that feels very at home just doing that. There's always going to be a piece of me that looks on with amusement and bewilderment that I ended up making my living as a singer. And that said, I'm fairly comfortable doing both now, and it's just kind of all developed organically into what it is. I can do both at the same time. I can just play guitar and feel okay, and now after all these years on all these different size stages with Alice just freehanding a mic, I can do that and feel reasonably at home. I think Kentrell and I have a similar outlook about desirable tone. There are differences in the way he hits the guitar versus the way I hit it, and that obviously has a huge effect on your tone. I mean, your tone's mainly in your hands, but in terms of amplification, in terms of what we both would think constitutes a good sound, I mean, we're pretty much in agreement. We like early Van Halen, we like Sabbath, those kinds of heavier sounds. And yet we both also appreciate cleaner rock guitar tones, whether it's AC/DC or whether it's Tom Petty and Mike Campbell and Heartbreakers. So when we began lining up our stage gear, like when he started using Friedman amps, and then shortly after I started using them, there was no hesitation or second thought about I wonder what I'm going to think of these. It was very much like, no, this is the best at doing the hot rodded Marshall sound that I've ever heard. I'm totally into this. This is awesome. Where have you been all my life? And also, yeah, he tends to like the voxier, clean and semi-clean tones that I like. Some people are more Fender people in terms of amp tone, whereas some people are a bit more inclined toward the British thing, Marshall, Vox, that kind of thing. I would put myself in that category, and I think Cantrell's pretty much there too. He definitely does some things that are unusual. He's like me, he's a self-taught player. So when you learn your instrument that way, and when you develop your style that way, there are going to be ways that you think and ways that you voice things, ways that you finger certain things that are really going to be unique to you. And if you try to teach them to somebody else, you might have a really hard time doing that. Luckily for me, I have been surprisingly adept at sort of copying the general idea of whatever it is. If he has something that has some weird fingering to it or something, I'm able to do that, or I'm able to work around it and do something that fits me. So sometimes he might finger something a little bit differently than I will, but the sum of the parts will be very effective, And a simple example, there's probably much weirder and better examples, but a simple example would be Check My Brain, where Cantrell does that, the sort of bridge bit or whatever, does it fill my bone? He fingers that like this. Or I should say, whereas I just do it here. doing open D, and I'm doing a bar chord D here. That's just one example. There's plenty of others, and you know, in the end, we make it work. I learned how to play music on stage by throwing my whole body completely into it. That was the way that I came up. It was not about looking cool or you know, or I don't know, playing the kind of music that would easily get you girlfriends. You know, it wasn't about that. I mean, obviously, I had no problem with you know, with any girls that liked the music I was playing back then, and there were some, and that was awesome. But that wasn't priority one at the outset, and so, you know, like what was priority one was expressing how you felt, both in what you're playing, how you're playing it, and the sound changes depending on how you throw your body into it. And so, when I was looking at you know, bands like Black Flag in the early days when I was starting out, those guys looked like they were breaking themselves into pieces over their instruments. And that's how I feel. That's what I want to do. Or you look at Hendrix and you look at how fluid he is, and you look at everything you're hearing is completely in line with how he's moving. It's one thing. The guitar, his own person, the music, it's all one thing. And by the same token, on the much more lo-fi, rougher end of the scale, I looked at a guy like Chuck Dukowski playing bass in Black Flag, or Greg Ginn, the way he played guitar in that band, the way, like, the unhinged kind of sound you were hearing, and the way what he looked like fit what he was playing, and it made a huge impression. So, you know, and obviously one guy came through a lot of stagecraft, you know, Hendrix playing, you know, with the R&B bands and backing up all these different people, and then finally getting to strike out on his own and let his freak flag fly, you know how you put it. Or a guy like Ginn, who was completely a self-taught guy who didn't even get into bands until he was an adult, and, you know, had to figure out his own style via the songs he was writing. You know, didn't learn covers, didn't learn other, you know, didn't back anybody up. He learned how to be in a band by starting a band. But they both had this wonderful, you know, this wonderful wholeness about their presentation that I think has been extremely influential to me, and kind of set the tone for what I'm doing on stage.
Well, thank you so much, William, for doing this interview.
Yeah.
Have a great rest of the tour and a good show tonight.
Well, right on, man. You too.
Me too.
We're in this together.
Yeah.
We're in this together, man.
Oh,